Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing something I haven't done in a while that I'm supposed to be doing pretty frequently, and this is another question and answer video. For those of you who haven't seen one of these videos before, all of the questions that I'm going to be going over come directly from people over on Patreon. Basically, if anyone of any tier can throw out questions for me to answer in a video format like this. Supposedly I was supposed to do these once a month, however, I was having a hard time getting questions to be able to answer in these videos, so it took some time off, and we're coming back at it again, and we got a few questions to go over here, most of which all from the same person, so again, kind of lending to the I need more questions, but let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll be going over what's in front of me here in a second. So the first question is from Rick, and it is, what is the best barrel length for a 300 Blackout pistol build in your opinion? Now, what I have here is actually a rifle. This is a short barreled rifle in 300 Blackout. If you guys have been following my channel, for the last few years, you'll have probably seen the videos I was doing with a 10.5 inch 300 Blackout. I always felt like the 10.5 inch was a good length, but it always seemed a little long for what it was. It always seemed like if you can go shorter, why not go shorter? And there's going to be a lot more testing I'm going to be doing, but basically this is a new upper build that I did in 300 Blackout. This one with an 8.3 inch ballistic advantage barrel. For what it's worth, all of the upper stuff I paid for, minus the suppressor. This is on loan from Silencer Shop for review. It's a Dead Air Nomad for what that's worth. I'll be doing a whole video on that later. But I wanted to go with 8.3 because it seemed like the best compromise between making sure I have decent length for a better effective use of supersonic ammo, while also being nice and short and compact. So when I'm shooting suppressed, I have a nice short overall package, and really this is going to be eventually set up as my go-to nighttime gun. It's also worth mentioning that if you follow Military Arms channel, he just recently did a video, it might have been just for patrons, but if not, you'll have probably seen it if you're seeing this video, comparing a 5.5 inch barrel 300 Blackout to a 9 inch barreled 300 Blackout, and he actually had some surprising results with the 5.5. Did better with subsonic as far as terminal ballistics than I would have guessed, but either way, I kind of feel like the shorter the better. I think 5.5 might be too short for my personal preferences, but kind of in that 8 to 9 inches I would say is kind of a sweet spot for 300 Blackout, whether you're doing a short barrel rifle like this or if you're doing a pistol build. That's just kind of my take on it, and just in case you're thinking, well, when you go this short you're losing all effectiveness with supers, I have a video on the CMMG Banshee where I was shooting 290 yards and hitting steel with supersonic ammo with 300 Blackout, so take that for what it is. Next question, also from Rick, kind of in the similar vein. What is currently the best platform and configuration rifle or pistol for the 7.62x39 being used in a defensive role? So to go over that question, I'm going to grab another visual aid. So as far as the best defensive setup for 7.62x39, personally, from my own experiences, I would still say it's some sort of AK-47. There's a lot of other options hitting the market now in 7.62x39. However, I've yet to be wowed by any. There's some interesting ones out there that I'd really like to try, but so far of the ones that I've used, I think the AK is still kind of best for 7.62x39. This is my another one of my SBRs. This is an Arsenal SLR 107 CR. So it's got about a 12.5 inch barrel. I have another one of the Dead Air Nomads, if you can kind of guess what my suppressor reviews are going to be next. To me, this is just kind of the ideal length and size and configuration, maybe notwithstanding in this general area. This is still getting sorted out, but this general size of AK I feel like is kind of ideal. You still have plenty of barrel length for good ballistic effectiveness, both external and terminal, but it's still relatively handy, and especially in a context like this where I have a folding stock, I can get this into nice small tight areas and not have to worry about it. I think if we were talking 5.45, maybe we could go down to the crink size, but I feel like in 7.62x39, this, or even honestly a full 16-inch AK, is a really good option. It's been very effectively used all across the world for decades and decades and decades. A lot of the stuff, like specifically AR 15s in 7.62x39. The biggest Achilles heel to those, in my opinion, is the magazines. The magazines are absolutely awful. I know there are some options for AR style guns that'll take AK mags, and that definitely interests me, and I'd like to get a little bit more time on those. Stuff like what's from CMMG. But again, the ones that take standard AR lowers, not a fan at all of those. One other platform that I really want to get more experience with is the VZ58. I think those have a lot of potential, again, in 7.62x39. I don't have a lot of trigger time on one of those. I'm going to be trying to rectify that here in the near-ish future. But for now, I don't have a lot of experience, so I can only, speak to that so much. And then Bren 2s have kind of recently come onto my radar, again in 7.62x39. I think, again, Achilles heel there, proprietary magazines, which I know is the case with VZ58, but those mags are really readily available. I love the ergonomics on the Bren 2, but the recoil impulse and the lack of a suppressed setting on the adjustable gas block, I still have to get over. So all that to say, long answer for a short question. I would say the AK is still the best out there. There are more and more modernization options hitting the market all the time. Like this has a KNS adjustable gas piston in it. There are ways of mounting suppressors, like with my JMac Customs muzzle brake up here. It's just a really good setup. Still good, again, figuring out optics and handguards. Honestly, this will probably end up with a Zenitco handguard here soon, just so I can fit infrared lasers and stuff on here. But for now, it's just a really, really awesome gun, and just, I think, a very practical self-defense tool. So a lot of the remaining questions have to do with current goings on. I'm going to try to stay as apolitical as I can, at least on videos. Maybe my Facebook is another story. But in these videos, I'm going to try to stay as, well, you get what I'm saying. Anyway, so the first one here, again from Rick. Your response to friends or family who up until recently have been anti-gunners, but now find themselves looking for my opinion and my assistance in purchasing a firearm, and then said same individuals purchase a firearm but can't find ammo and have asked me to give them some. So this has actually happened quite a bit, and for those of you who don't know, I work full-time at a gun store, so I'm coming across a lot of first-time gun owners. In fact, I would say the vast majority of gun purchases in the last several months have been first-time gun owners. So this is something I've seen quite a bit of, and also family members. So my parents, for the longest time, had no interest in owning a firearm, but with everything going on, have decided it's time for them to take their steps into it, and they're doing very, very well. They kind of took my advice, and thankfully so far everyone who's kind of come to me directly has really been open to my advice. It also helps that I in most ways know what I'm talking about, at least as far as good guns for first-time gun owners. I have some family down in California who've been looking into purchasing their first firearm, and I always knew California gun laws were bad, but when I was trying to find guns on the approved roster that I would actually recommend, it was surprisingly difficult. I mean, other than a Glock 19 or a Glock 17, which good luck finding any of those right now. But had a lot of people coming to me, and my advice was, first of all, the most important thing, just with any firearm that you're using for self-defense, make sure that it goes bang. As long as it's reliable and you can trust your life to it reliability-wise, that's when we can start bringing in things like ergonomics, controls, feel and capacity and everything else. My parents ended up with an easy shield, and they love that, and they're shooting it very well. They're very confident with it, which has been really fun to see. As far as family in California, they've also got some other influences down there that are steering them in directions possibly other than I would personally recommend, but I can only say so much from up here. But we've just been having a lot of people looking for guns, and really surprised at the lack of them or at the difficulty of the process. So, for example, here in Oregon, all of the background checks for the state go through a state program. So we have basically set up all gun stores in Oregon, all submit to the same database, and then the Oregon State Police goes through that, and then they issue approvals, denials, delays, etc., etc. A couple weeks ago, it got up to 5,000 people in line waiting to get looked at for background checks, which for context is about 6-ish days of waiting from when you submit your background check to waiting for the government to say, yes, you can have your your constitutionally protected firearm. And we can kind of go on about that, but that's more of a topic for another video. But having a lot of people who, first time coming into a gun store, or family members first time buying a gun, finding out, hey, so yeah, you made the decision you want to buy this, but due to laws that you've voted into effect, or maybe not you, but your parents or grandparents or anything else along the line, you don't actually get this right away. You actually have to wait for this process. And a lot of people are surprised by the process. We've had a lot of people get denied because they didn't realize what things were disqualifiers. We've had a lot of people get delayed because they didn't know what things would cost something like that. And just a lot of people surprised at the process in general. And so it's just been interesting to kind of gauge people's reactions to that kind of all across the spectrum. As far as ammo goes, thankfully I haven't had any family members directly ask for ammo, but they all have been surprised at the lack of availability so far. My parents have, again, been very eagerly wanting to go out and shoot their new gun, which again, they're surprisingly competent with. And the big hang up is being able to get ammo. Now I've offered actually to load up ammo for them, but they've graciously said, no, we'll just wait till there's more in stock to buy, since they have an insider at the local gun store, so that they can come in and pick up more, and we can go back out to the range. So it's just been interesting, again, seeing people who are just completely new to this industry as a whole, who are learning about how ready access some things are and how hard to access other things are. So it's just, again, just been an interesting experience altogether. Now, another one here from Rick. Again, very limited questions coming in, guys, so please throw some more in. You're responsive stopped by a protest either on a surface street or highway while driving. So I guess first of all, thankfully I've not quite found myself in this position. I came close once, but where I live has been a little bit more tame than some of the other parts of Oregon. There was a situation where I was driving home from work one day during the week, which was, it seemed like an odd night for things to be happening, but they were starting to try to block off the road. Right as I was approaching, I was able to change lanes and get by without any interesting things happening. So that was fortunate. If you find yourself, I guess, first of all, and we're speaking in broad terms here because the situation is going to be very, very different from case to case. First of all, avoidance is going to be the best thing. If you know stuff is happening, just avoid it altogether. I'm trying to stay as far as I can from Portland just in general. That's just kind of a rule for all the time, but especially right now. If I have no reason to be up there, I'm going to avoid it. And if I can avoid the areas that I know are problem areas, like the federal courthouse, I'm going to avoid those areas as much as possible. If you do find yourself in those situations, trying not to provoke anything is a good idea. Now, we see a lot of the very intense interactions being plastered all over the internet. The vast majority of times when people block the roads and all that, nothing happens. So just sitting in your car and waiting it out, or trying to turn around and find an alternate route, is going to be your best bet. However, if you find yourself, as someone recently did, in a situation where someone comes up to your vehicle with a firearm, and depending on who you believe, the story's kind of been different from one person to another, potentially having a firearm pointed at you while you're in your vehicle, your local rules or your local laws will vary, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to give you legal advice. But if I am in fear for my life or the life of any of the occupants of the vehicle, I am either going to extricate myself from that situation, i.e. driving however I need to get out of that situation, or use my firearm to eliminate that potential threat. The big thing to remember there is, if you are choosing that course of action, whether or not you were the initiator of that violent encounter, the whole party there doesn't know that maybe you weren't the first person to introduce lethal force, and now they're going to think that you were the person who first introduced it, and now you're going to be the enemy of that entire circle, and there could be other armed people in that protest, as we've seen elsewhere, and they could be firing rounds at your vehicle. So you just took a bad situation to worse. Again, it's all going to vary, but the big thing is avoidance, and know your laws. There's a lot of really bad legal advice on the internet. Know what your local laws say about what you can and can't do, when you can and can't use lethal force, when you can and can't use your vehicle to get out of a situation. Knowledge is power, people. Educate yourself. Now, just to lighten the mood here, the last question from Rick: top or bottom bunk? I'm going to go ahead and this may be surprising, and I want to hear what everyone else here says. I go for bottom bunk, mostly because then I can hang stuff off the top bunk and kind of block myself off and have my own little secluded private little area. Granted, in the military I didn't find myself in that situation very much, but when I was deployed we had these like 10-person tents, and being able to hang up sheets in between each person, basically have your own private living space, as not private as it actually is, gives you just a sense of, you know, security, not security, but just privacy, and that's a very good thing to have just psychologically. So I'm going to go for bottom bunk in that reason. Also, if you fall out, you're not going to fall as far, and it's easier to get in and out in general. That being said, if someone on top bunk is a really like noisy person or moves a lot in their sleep, that can kind of suck. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. So one of the other things that one of our patrons, Eric, wanted to know about was some stories about new gun owners and new gun purchasers and kind of their interesting questions and all that. That's probably something I'm going to save for a dedicated patron video. So if that sounds enticing to you, or if you want to be able to ask questions that would be answered in a format like this, definitely check out my Patreon. I think it's worth it, but obviously I have a bias here. Basically, because of Patreon, I'm able to come out here and test out different products and dedicate time to come to the range. I just recently moved, which is why content's been kind of sporadic recently, and I'm still kind of getting settled in. So please be patient with that, but hopefully we'll be getting everything worked out here soon and get content back on a regular schedule. But now I've got like an hour drive each way to the range, so again, patrons are helping pay for gas and everything else that goes along with that. So I really appreciate what they're doing, hence why I'm doing stuff like this. And we're going to be doing live streams again once everything's set up at the new place. And again, more regular content. I should have some studio space set up, which will help, again, do regular content. But in the meantime, I just hope you guys are willing to stick around and enjoy what's coming so far. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. If you have any experience with any of the stuff we've talked about, please share that down below. Let other people get your opinion instead of just mine. But anyway, with all that being said, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching. But for now, don't have a whole lot of experience. But for now, I don't have a lot of... So a lot of these other questions kind of have to do with current events, with everything going on. I'm going to try... So a lot of the remaining questions have to do with that kind of all across the spectrum. And as far as ammo goes... As far as ammo goes, thankfully I haven't had anyone... As far as ammo goes, thankfully I haven't had any family members directly ask for ammo.